To start, though, I thought you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then how you became interested specifically in the topic of relationships. I'm always curious, like how people niche down, you know?
Right, right. I'm there. Um, my journey really and all of it is because I'm a recovering heroin addict. When you really pull
Wow.
everything down, I was a drug addict from a young age. And when I got clean and sober, I was in college and I was a poli sci major. I have a bachelor's in poli sci because I was going to be a lawyer. And then, it really twists your whole life when you get clean. There's a whole other thing you have to do because it's not just about giving up drugs. It's about living a different kind of life and thinking differently. And I did everything. I walked on hot coals with Anthony Robbins. I mean, back when there was like 300 people in the room. I'm talking like Anthony Robbins before he was Anthony Robbins. I did Est and LifeSpring, you name it. I did all kinds of things, really on that journey of kind of self-discovery. And of course, through that, relationships were the thing. I was terrible at them. I just, it's a skill. All the things that are in relationships are skills. And I did not learn those in my dysfunctional family growing up or through my drug addiction. And I realized I was like, I don't, I always joked I wasn't in relationships. I took hostages, we'd move in together after a week and, and then of course, as soon as it got serious, I was out. It was like, oh, your time's up. Oh, you want to do more? I have to go. And so, over the years, and I kept doing therapy and other things. And but through that, I went and got a master's in counseling psychology, but then I went into business and did an MBA and my PhD is in organizational psychology. So I got
Oh,
really interested in business. I was trying to help more people, have a bigger impact, and business seemed the place to do it. And so I've done sort of everything. And I think that's what, does make me different, I should say, because I have this interesting background. And I was working with executives who had drug and alcohol problems was a big part of my life for many years and helping them, get better. And what was happening was they kept starting to report that most of them were men, and straight men. My relationship with my wife is really good and we're doing really well. And my God, I'm closer to my kids and and I was like, what is going on? I was never meeting these women. I just was working with these men, but because I had a counseling background, I didn't know the difference between coaching and counseling. Like, I'm not sure I still do, frankly, but so my style, I was really getting into, their happiness level and things. And that led to my first book, which was Be Happily Married, Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, because I started to really codify and quantify what I was doing. Like, what am I doing that like all these different men are telling me the relationships are better? And I put that together in that book. And then, as the last few years, I've been realizing that really all the work I do with people, and I do a lot of individual work now too. So it started with just relationships. And that's a lot of my work, of course, because actually, that's all my work, really. It's just not all romantic anymore. It's our
right.
relationship
Yeah.
with ourselves, right? It's our relationship. We know the Harvard study, everything else, that your level of satisfaction in your life is absolutely 100% the number one thing beyond everything else. Nothing's even close, is your relationships with other people. That's it. That is how you're happy or not. Now, how much money you have, I know all the things we think are the thing are not the thing. And so, but I realized as I was talking to people over and over that they were asking a bunch of different questions, but I had the same answer. How can I be happier in my life? How can I be happier in my relationship? How can I lose weight? How can I feel more peaceful? How do I stop my brain from overthinking and the overwhelm? And my answer to everything was you have to have better boundaries. And
Mhm.
because that is the answer. And that was it. And I thought, and of course I kept doing this work and I had many, many clients saying, you should write a book on this. I thought, finally, I was like, I should write a book on this. So that was this last book I put out a few months ago is Boundaries Made Easy, because really it is the answer to a happy life.
I feel like boundaries are such a hot topic nowadays. You hear about them a lot. but I don't know that everyone truly understands what it is. And I think
Mm-hmm.
people just throw it around like, oh yeah, set a boundary, or like, oh, I got to set a boundary. But like, then we're like, well, what the hell? What is that? So like, if an alien came down and they were like, what is a boundary? Like, how would you just like
Yeah.
bare bones describe what a boundary even is?
Bare bones, because most people do
Yeah.
use it incorrectly. They rules are different than boundaries. Okay. A rule that you have in your household, like we have dinner at 5, is very
Mm.
that's not a boundary. That's just a rule you have. It's a social rule. Boundaries are when you identify what your standards are, and most people don't know what their standards are, what you need to feel safe and confident in your life. That's what a boundary is. When you've identified that and you create from that, you have a standard for how you were to be treated so you can feel safe and confident. And then a boundary always has teeth. So saying something, the most common thing people do is they say, well, I set a boundary. I told him I didn't like that. I set a boundary with my mother. I told her how I was feeling when she said blah, blah, blah. Those are not boundaries. Those are just you saying stuff. Those are you saying like, I don't like that, or this made me feel this way, or whatever. That's not a boundary. A boundary always has a response that you will have if the person or the situation isn't to your standard. That's what it is.
Okay. And so how does a person recognize, like, what is a way to tell that somebody is in need of setting boundaries, like whether it be with themselves or with their partner or a friend? Like, how do we identify that in ourselves? Like, oh, I should probably work on boundaries.
Yep. It's really easy. It's if you ever feel resentment, that's on you.
Oh, that's a big one.
I know. Any resentment you have to your partner, you don't have boundaries up. So if you're resentful of your mom for asking you to come over on Sunday and clean, even though you're the one with 2 kids and your sister has no kids, but she never asks her, do you know what I'm talking about? And you go anyway and just do it. You're resentful, right? So when you're resentful, I would say it's absolutely number one of anyone else, or and it's connected. If you feel like a victim anywhere in your life, well, I can't change the relationship because my partner won't change anything. My boss is an asshole, so there's, nothing I can do. And I need the job.
Yeah.
Anytime you act like a victim, you need better boundaries because you are not a victim in your life. Ever, ever, ever. Never, ever, 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 ever.
I feel like moms and parents with young kids, like I am self-proclaimed like not a people pleaser. That's just not my thing. And
Wow.
I think I am just naturally good at setting boundaries or saying no to things, like without even knowing what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But when you said that, like the resentment thing, and you gave an example, I specifically remember being at my mom's house, and to leave my mom's house to drive back home, I have to pass my mama's house, like my mom's mom. And it's 5 hours away, so it's a long drive to get up there, but we go visit all the time. And then when my son was really young, and it was kind of like annoying to get him in and out of the car seat, and it's like a whole big thing.
Yeah.
My mama was like, oh, stop in on your way out. And I was like, if you want to visit with us, I was like, I get it. Like, but I'm not taking Milo out of his car seat and then putting him back in. I was like, if you want to come to my mom's house and visit before we leave, like, that's great, but I'm not stopping. Like, you know what I mean? And it's these little things. Like, if you go through life, like you said, then I'm not resentful. I'm not like, oh, here we go. Like, fucking stop in here. Like, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, no, like, we're not going to do that. And like, no hard feelings. He's a pain in the ass to get in the car seat. Like,
Yep.
There's so many situations like that when you have little kids. Like, oh, come over for Christmas. Like, let your kids stay up late. Like, and you have to it's just like boundary, like nonstop to keep your sanity. Yeah.
Yes. But often they don't, right? Oh, let him have the sugar, because your mom is pushing. Oh, come on, a little, something's not going to work. And then you're up all night with your kid, furious at your parent, right? Or that they changed the bedtime, or the kid didn't nap. Oh, I used to because we were crazy with the sleep schedule. We always were. Yeah. And you know what? My kids were not assholes because they slept. Yeah. They had lots of good sleep. They had lots of, continuity, right? Lots of consistency.
Yeah.
But we would get asked all the time. And there was one or two times I gave in, I was like, oh, maybe I'm being too, you're a new mom. You don't understand. It's, this is just life. And both times I was resentful and angry at them for making me do
Mhm.
this. Right. So think about that. That's how you also know boundaries are love. I say this all the time. Boundaries are love. Because if I'm walking away and I'm mad at my mom now and talking shit about my mom to my sister, probably, or one of my brothers, like, "Ah, ah, ah," is that loving? Is that
Yeah.
me in a loving relationship with this person? So we often collapse our boundaries because we're trying to be nice. And this is the big thing with boundaries. You should never, ever, 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 ever you make a boundary or collapse a boundary because of how you feel in a moment. Boundaries should have
Mm.
nothing to do. You should have a boundary, end of. It doesn't matter how you feel in a moment. Oh, he's being so nice. Let's just do it this once. I hear it all the time. And then you do it and the person doesn't appreciate it enough, right? They don't thank you for your sacrifice enough.
Yeah.
And then you get resentful and you sort of slam the door. I call it going from too thin boundaries. Your boundaries get too thin and too easy to then you get very thick and you start like, I'm never speaking to them again. I'm blocking that person. I'm, cutting them off. We get very rigid because we haven't kept our boundary, which is somewhere in the middle. And boundaries are love. It's like, yeah, like you said, it's like, yeah, no, if you want to come to mom's house, I'd love to see you. That'd be great. But I'm not. I don't even think you had to say the excuse, quote unquote, of getting Milo out of the car seat. Because what
Yeah.
happens sometimes is that the other person is like, oh, he'll be fine. Oh,
Yeah.
it's just a few minutes. They start to argue with your reason. So I
Right.
like to repeat that phrase, no is a complete sentence. And that idea that especially women, we feel like we have to justify or explain why. Like it has to be a good enough reason why. Oh, mom, I can't come over on Sunday. The kids are napping and I've got all this stuff going on there. She's like, oh, they can nap here. Oh, we have bed set up for that. They start to argue the
Yeah.
point
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're like,
instead,
shit.
right? And then you're like, crap, now I'm stuck, or it's only Tuesday. Do the other things you have to do before that. Sunday stays away, right? As opposed to if you just say no, she's like, well, why not? And you say, yeah, I'm not making plans on Sundays now. Well,
Mhm.
why don't you what do you mean you don't make plans? I don't make plans on Sundays. And then change the subject. So what else
Yeah.
is going on? Oh, let me tell you what little Milo did yesterday. It was so cute. Oh, let me talk about the dog. I don't care. Change the subject. Stop staying there. But it's like the hook, right? We get hooked in and they start to reel us in. And women especially we know this from research, we feel a need to take care of others. And we're
Mm.
socialized this way. This is what we do. And so we feel like we have to explain ourselves.
It's like the biggest boundary I've ever set in my life that was shocking to me was after we had Milo. I was expecting, and I've talked about this so much and put out so much content about it, and I didn't realize how big of a deal it actually is. But when we first had Milo, I expected to have all the visitors come over. Like, cause that's what everybody does, right? You have a baby, everybody wants to see the baby. Like, it's fine. We had Milo. I was like, I don't want a visitor, like, for
Mm,
weeks.
yeah.
I just wanted my mom.
Yep.
She lived down the street, so she was helping us,
That was
and
easy.
she helped me keep that barrier, like that
Oh,
boundary set, right? Like she was like the gatekeeper, like, oh, they don't really want visitors yet. And I was shocked. I was like, I thought I was going to want to have visitors. I didn't want visitors at all. And then it was interesting because a few weeks after Milo was born, I was at like a family function and my uncle was like, oh, how are you doing? Like things must have been really difficult, right? Because you didn't want visitors. And I was like, no, we were fine. I just didn't want visitors. And then it clicked like, oh my God, people think there's something wrong with me because I just wanted to be alone and have my mom and learn how to breastfeed and, like heal. And yeah, so I started talking about that a lot on social media and on the podcast. The response that I would get from so many women saying, like, I didn't want visitors at all. I felt so guilty. Like, people had to come. Like, my husband refused to not let his parents, so they had to come stay with us for a week. And like, new moms' boundaries are just overlooked and thrown in the garbage because it's like, it's it's all about the baby at that point, and what the mom wants does not matter. And so I love talking about this topic and that boundary specifically because it's a big one. And like you only have those weeks in early postpartum once. So how do you want to spend them? Like hating visitors and resenting everybody, and yeah, it's wild.
Yep. Well, this idea that what I get asked the most is, oh, well, how do I tell someone a boundary without them getting upset? How do I do that?
Yeah.
And I always have to, right? It's crazy to think about. People will be upset. I can guarantee you most of the time. And that lets you know a boundary is long overdue. Because people aren't as upset with me when, as soon as I was doing the thing with the napping with the kids, right? People weren't they stopped getting upset because they knew I was going to keep the boundary. So they stopped fighting it. And it wasn't a thing. And they respected it. They had to. It wasn't, what's really important? I respected it. That's really who respects the boundary. Other people will or won't. Because they might even not come over, but then, bitch and moan about you. Oh my God, Abby is so anal. That's all I ever, I'm sure it's what everybody was saying. I'm so anal. I'm so like such a sleep Nazi is what I heard. I was like, oh my God, people, I just want my kids to nap. That's not an unreasonable, crazy thing. And I want to nap. I want to rest in the day. It was such an obvious thing to me for the health of my kids that thank God I didn't even allow anything else in. But I'm a trained person and I had trouble with those, I would lose it sometimes and do it. But that's really, you're the only one who can respect your boundaries, and other people will get upset. You can say things, and people know this. You've said something perfectly to your husband or wife or whoever you have, or your person, you've said it so well. You thought about it, you prepared, right? You said the thing, and they still got upset because it's not about that. There is no perfect way. Other people's reactions are 100% about them, not about you. I don't care if you screamed at them. They still have a choice in how they react to you. So it doesn't matter how nice you are. All you can do is know that you've said something from a loving heart. And I, again, usually try to say less than more. Try to just almost like a mantra. Like, yes, as I said, the kids go down for their nap at 1. And then they're like, well, what about this? And what if we stayed here and we could probably get back by 1:30? Yeah. As I said, the kids go down at 1. So that doesn't sound good. You just, you just stay there. But like I often compare it to like a cop pulling you over on the highway for speeding, right? The cop doesn't come to your window, or she doesn't come to your window and go, what is wrong with you? How dare you speed on my highway, right? They don't take it personally that you were speeding. They give you a ticket and you got to go deal. They couldn't be calmer about it. Do you know what I mean?
They don't say much.
They don't say much. That's it. Here's your ticket. You went too fast. You crossed a boundary, but I'm not taking it personally. And I tell everyone, I say it in the book, be like the cop. Just say the boundary. Yeah. Because I could argue all I want. Oh, I was on my way to the I didn't feel good. I have to pee. And the cop would be like, yeah, the speed limit was 60 and you were doing 80. Like they wouldn't get into my excuse. They wouldn't get nothing.
Yeah.
This is the boundary. We're done.
The thing about the nap schedules, and because it's February now, we just went through a holiday season not too long ago. And every holiday season I hear about, we're spending the holidays at my in-laws, but of course they plan like Christmas dinner or like the holiday events will start right during nap time. And we've explained that the kids like nap at that time, but they won't change it. This is like a huge thing in families. And I like how you're saying like, well, we won't be there until, whatever time because the kids nap, end of story. But I know a lot of parents are concerned about then in-laws or even their own parents and family members like holding a grudge again. Like, why are we so concerned that they're going to be upset that we're not going to make it for the beginning of the holiday event?
Because we're women.
Who cares?
I know, but we do. And we don't want that. And then we want to explain to them. But then they're up all night and then I can't sleep. And then, Rod, my husband can't sleep. Like, that's why you don't. But it's so hard. I get it. I mean, I had to do it. I get it. I have kids, I'm there. And I will say this, you want to prep things well. So what you said was great. Like, let them know this is our schedule, and then let them know ahead of time, because expectations are the
Mm,
hardest thing, right? So if you can manage as many as you can of those with your honesty, that will help. Don't get into, well, when we get there, I don't want them upset now. So I'll, won't tell them at the last minute. No, 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 no. Honesty as early as you can. And I never stayed at like my in-laws' house. I never stayed with aunt whoever. We always, 100% of the time spent the money. And yes, people were upset. What do you mean we have this big house? Why aren't you here with us? Oh, but I want to wake up with the kids on whatever morning, right? Yeah, we don't. Yeah, when they're
mhm.
older, we'll think about that. When they're not napping
Yeah.
anymore, it'll be great. We'll be back. It'll be really fun. They'll be up.
When it comes to stuff like that, like I am not apologetic about things like that. I just flat out like I'm very high maintenance. End of story.
But you're not high maintenance. Even that. Fuck that. Like this
Oh yeah,
idea
okay.
that
Thanks.
because you have a boundary, seriously, right? Here you go. Because they call you that. Right?
Yeah.
Renee's so high maintenance. Oh yeah. Abby's so anal. She's so
Yeah.
controlling. And I am controlling, don't get me wrong. But they label it because number one, they're not doing it. So it must be wrong that you are. Right? They have to
Right.
make it
Yeah.
wrong. They have to judge it. They have to make it wrong. And so, yeah, no, you're not. You're not high maintenance.
That's right. I have a sound machine, I have my castor oil pack, I have all my things, but that's fine, This is just who
As
I
you
am.
should
Yeah.
for your comfort. I think it's great
Yeah.
when you plan. The things I used to bring on airplanes, I used to have to fly with my
Oh
kids a
my
lot when they were
god.
little, and because I
We're
had
the
that
same
kind of job.
person.
Yeah. And the things I was planned, man. I had in the middle of the trip, I had new Lego sets coming out. Like I was prepared, right? Prepared. And every time we got off the plane, people were like, your kids are amazing. Oh my God. If I could have kids like that, I would have. And I'm like, it's not rocket science. I'm just prepared for my own mental health. I don't want to be anxious on the plane. I don't want to be worried the whole time, right? I used to bring chocolates for the people around me and earplugs. So, and I would hand them out when we sat down because I could see people rolling their eyes like, oh, great, an infant is next to me. And by the way, my kids never made a peep, but you make friends, again, anything you can do. But I will say this, when you're going home for the holidays, don't stay with your family or for whatever that is. Just let them know, like when the kids are older, we will, I'm sure we'll look at this again when they're not napping. It'll be great. Right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Like we like to have our own space.
We
Like
like our
end of
own
story.
space. It's just easier, and then stop talking. Right. Again, you
Yeah.
don't have to explain. You don't have to prove. They will push, but you just sort of nod. And it's so funny to nod. What I do a lot is I go, yeah. Like, but they're missing this first Christmas, or I'm Jewish, but this first Christmas or whatever. Right. And by the way, that they're not going to remember. But
Yeah.
beyond that, it's like, yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't say, well, they're not because they're so young. It's, like they won't remember it. Don't say any of that. Just say, I know. Yeah. Yeah. Just nod.
I also like to make kind of a joke. Like sometimes, if people are pressuring us to have him stay up late or whatever it might be, I just kind of point out like, so first of all, him staying up late means that now my husband and I don't have time to relax and have a drink and enjoy ourselves and have conversations with people. Okay. It's like, that's why we want him to go to bed. So also, are you going to get up with him in the morning when he's like all out of sorts and up at 5 a.m.? Are you sleeping with my child tonight and going to take care of him in the morning? No? Okay. Okay. So moving on.
Yeah. 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 I
Yeah.
love that. And by the way, what I said, you don't want to be with my kid at 11 o'clock at night.
No.
You like don't want to. Trust me. They're going to be horrible. This cuteness that
Mhm.
you're seeing right now that you love is has a cutoff at 7:30.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's
and
like
then
it's like the reverse of Cinderella. And then it's
exactly
like,
exactly that. So you
yeah.
can remind them, but I love it.
So is the saying that I always hear accurate when they say how somebody responds to your boundary is none of your business?
Right. It's very accurate.
So you just
It's
kind of
very
let it
accurate.
go.
It's when you're still nodding. You're like, yeah, I know that's hard.
Yeah.
Or I'll miss hanging out with you too. Yeah, I'm
Right.
sad that we're not going to be there for Christmas dinner too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a little guilt thrown in there. That's a little Jewish mother guilt thrown in. How do you like that? I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Yeah, we're sad too that you scheduled dinner at 5 and we can't be there. Yeah.
Exactly. It goes both ways, right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
And you just,
that's a good one.
yeah. Anyway, sorry. That's passive aggressive. Don't do that. But I've maybe done it.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. I'm really curious how I feel like a lot of the times when we're talking about boundaries is well, especially in my world of like parenting and
Mhm.
moms, and it has to do with like grandparents or like it's
Sure.
never really boundaries with regard to your romantic partner. So,
Mhm.
what are some of those boundaries and how do they make us feel more connected to our partners?
Well, and with other people too, and they make us feel more connected. I mean, I think one thing is that, when you and your partner have the same boundary and you're holding it together, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's usually the problem I run into is that,
Mm,
dad is, who doesn't do the primary caregiving or isn't the one they scream for at 2 in the morning.
hmm
Or that dad does go in, but you're awake now and you can't go back to sleep. Right. I had that. They used to drive me nuts. And then my husband would come back and fall fast asleep in 2 seconds. And
Instantly.
I was up
Yeah.
for 3 hours hating him. So yeah. But so it might be, so if your partner and you and your partner can come together. And, one of the things that I tell parents is, and this is what's harder for, again, heterosexual relationships. Men have a harder time if they don't believe something to be true, supporting it. And so, well, I think she's being too controlling, too anal, too something, too sensitive, too something is usually there when she won't let my mother come over. You know what I mean? It's my mother's grandchild too. That's the stuff I hear the most. That kind of thing where the partner is not gatekeep, is on another side and discounting. And now we're really at the root because when I get to remember I said what a boundary really is? Here's the thing. When we don't get what we need, we focus on what we want. Okay. So what we want are things like, please tell your mother no, please put down the toilet seat, please wipe the counter fully, don't leave jam on it. Please, and we start nagging because they're not right. They're not giving us what we want. What we need is what we should be talking to them. And then men get overwhelmed. They're like, no matter what I do, it's never enough. I did wipe the counter, but it wasn't perfect. I left jam. So now she's still like, why bother? I'm telling you, because I meet with all these couples. This is
Yeah.
or individuals, and this is what gets said. And what you need to get is that what you're talking about the wrong things with him. You're talking about the wrong things. What is it that you need? What you need are when you really have your boundaries, you identify your standards. What you need to feel safe and secure. What did I say earlier? Safe and confident. So here's what I need more than anything from Gary, from my man, from Gary. Gary's very shy, by the way. Don't tell him I ever talk about him on these things. So I've got like millions of listeners on my podcast, and it's like, don't like Gary now. Um, but you want to say, Gary, the number one thing, he has my back no matter what. To me, it's the only reason to be married, frankly. I don't even know why else I would be in a relationship. So what he does is he has my back and then he'll ask questions later if he doesn't agree. And we've trained this, this has been years in the making here, right? Because usually he wouldn't agree. He's like, why is this such a big deal to you? Let's just do it. Right? He would kind of fight. And I'd say to him, and then we have this conversation. So what I really want is for these women, let's say the husband's letting his mom come over when she doesn't, or stay too late or whatever.
Yeah.
And is to say, like, I don't feel like you have my back no matter what. And I want to. And it shows up in different ways. But let me just ask you, and this is where you ask questions. When you hear me say that I need your mom not to be here, what do you hear? What are you worried about? And usually it's that he doesn't want to upset his mom,
Yep.
right? He's avoiding conflict with mommy. That's what's really going on. And he's throwing you under the bus in the thing because he knows you'll stay, you'll be there, he'll deal with that. But the present with his mother, he doesn't want to deal with. And so you want to have that conversation and not judge it. It's like, are you just are you worried about upsetting your mom? Like, what? Talk to me. Because this is something I need you to have my back 100% of the time, even if you don't agree. We can talk about you not agreeing, but to the person in the moment, wherever we are, that is my standard. In the same way that if we're out and someone like this has happened, like my brothers will be teasing me about something, and something that Gary can tell is hurting my feelings. And because, I'm still a little sister, even at 58, and Gary will be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Your sister's the most beautiful woman in the world. Like, boom. Like, just done. We're done with the conversation. I am not on your team. I'm on her team. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to like be cool with you and get in. And because he's so confident, he's so clear. But it's that kind of stuff that has me falling madly in love with him over and over. Right. And he sometimes cleans up, but there's still whiskers in the sink and toenails where I don't want them. And you know what I mean? But that stuff is gold.
Are the boundaries with your romantic partner, so your husband, your wife, like, do you recommend people sit down and go over things together, like in general? And then if something were to happen, how, like in the moment, are you supposed to address it? Or is it kind of like, okay, you do?
Yeah. And again, boundaries or not, I really need you when you clean the kitchen to wipe every counter. I really need you to leave the toilet seat here. You have to put the cap on the tooth. Those are not boundaries. Those are things you
like. Those are rules.
Exactly.
Too. Those are kind of like
social rules. And you know what? If your partner was doing the other thing, you wouldn't fucking care about the toilet seat. Because I don't. I got to tell you, it annoys me a little sometimes, little things he does. But mostly, this man so has my back. He looks at me like I'm magic. I can handle some, like I'll clean up after him. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's pretty good, actually. He's ex-Navy. He's pretty tip type, but he doesn't see dirt like I do, right? He can clean the bathroom and not empty the garbage can. Does anybody have a man who does this? What is that? I clean the bathroom and then the garbage can's overflowing and you're like, but they don't see it. And he's also been
this is very true.
He's been stepping over the toilet paper on his way upstairs and not bringing it to the upstairs bathroom, just stepping right over it, like to get upstairs. And you're like, but when you get this other stuff, I'm telling you, you still want him to bring up but I'll say to him, hey, babe, can you take the toilet paper up when you go up, please? I'm not full of resentment. Right. I'm not full of, and I'm not asking him to do 50 things all the time. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm getting my heart filled. I don't need the other things for him to prove he loves me. Because we say things like, I'm not your maid. He thinks I'm his maid, right? I never think Gary thinks I'm his maid because of the way he treats me. He doesn't treat me in any way, even though he leaves shit out and doesn't wipe the counter like I would and other things. Yeah. But I know he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. Yeah. If you're not getting what you need, you focus on what you want.
And those little tiny things almost become, like, we take it as like a personal attack instead of just being like, oh, he doesn't, like I know my husband is so, and I'm going to use the word anal about dishes in the sink. Like there cannot be a dish in the sink, but he will leave shit all over the counter and it's not a big deal. And I'm like, really? But like, I get it. And for me, like, I'm also very self-aware, and things that I do that piss him off, like I just throw recycling in the garage. Like, oh, it'll end up in the bin somehow.
It'll make it there.
Yeah, it'll be like the boxes will take themselves down and set up nicely.
So
but
funny.
Like, it's being self-aware and also putting yourself in their shoes. Like him not having the counter spotless every night before we go to bed. That's just, it's not his priority. The dishes are.
Yep.
We're different.
And one isn't right or wrong. And that's where we as women, more than men, I will say, because I work with both a lot, we get into trouble. Things are a preference. They're a preference. And we think our preference is right because it's so clean. Clean is right. I mean, being fully clean is right. No, it's not. It's just a preference you have. So when I'm actually cleaning the last of his whiskers out of the sink, because he does rinse it because he knows I don't like it, right? He
He
knows,
tries.
so he rinses, but there's always it's gross. And I've timed it because one day when I was so resentful and petty, I timed it because I was like, mother effer, like it took 3 seconds. 3 seconds. I went 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 was doing it. 3 seconds. Am I really? And he did rinse it, but he didn't do it perfectly. Is this really what I want to talk to him about? The 3 seconds it took me? He's not disrespecting me. He's not, thinks I'm his maid because he doesn't care right? It's a preference, but we get in our heads and we label and define things that we shouldn't. We start defining, he thinks I'm his maid. He doesn't care. If he cared about me, if he cared about what I think is important, then that means he loves me. No, it does not. It does not. You need to come together though.
Do you guys have boundaries around cell phones?
Yeah. I don't know if that's
Can you
boundary
explain
as
that?
much as, again, our social
A
rules.
rule.
So I need to feel like we have a thing that we want to feel number one in each other's presence. Okay. So that's like our boundary. So
That's a good one.
yeah. And I give this to a lot of people, and we've talked about it because we had to talk about it. So and I'll give you an example. We were at a cocktail party thing, and he was already and I came in later because I had to come from work, and he was looking at the door all the time for me to come in. So when he was talking to people, but he caught my eye way across the room, and big smile, and he walked towards me. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same thing with the cell phone. So we do have social rules in the house with the kids too. There are no cell phones at the table. There are no cell phones when you're talking to someone. There are right. We have meal times, things like that. There's no electronics. There's no TVs on. There's just times, right? We have times, when the cell phones get taken away. But in general conversation, when we're talking, so we know from the research that if you have a cell phone just out, even if it's face down, we know that we're distracted. And really what the thing with the cell phones is that you're basically telling your partner that something is more important than them in this moment. And it's become so ubiquitous, it's become so. I was walking the dog this morning, and everyone was on their cell phones walking their dogs. It's like, oh my God, walk your freaking dog. Look in the star.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Pushing a carriage, looking at itself. It's so ubiquitous. So you do want to talk about, again, the standard. I want to feel like I'm number one around you, and I don't when your cell phone is constantly out. Again, now ask questions. What rules are you comfortable with us having about that? Let's talk about it. Because your rules aren't necessarily, no cell phones at all from 9 to 10, might not be what they can do, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. might not be what they're willing to do. But to have that conversation about for me, it really hurts my feelings when the cell phone is out. And I did, by the way, some episodes on this on my podcast with all the research, if anybody wants to go search, but, or I can send to you. I can send to you, and you can link in your show notes, but really about the research about and that's what I've had people show their man. Usually women do it too, though. They'll get on those games and social media scrolling and all that. So either way, you really want to denote what time. And again, those are social rules to me, when the cell phone can be out and when it can't. But it is based on this feeling that I want to feel number one, we're together. Gary and I have a thing, and I give this to all my couples. I'm like, always greet at the door. I don't care.
We need to be better at this.
100% of the time. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what's happening, unless you're fast asleep. Okay. And that's great. Get your butt up and go to the door. And we sort of have a joke, we want to wait at the door like a golden retriever, right? With that enthusiasm, because, this is your person. Let's connect. Let's really, instead of hey, how's your day? Fine. Not even in the same part of the house, right? And you get those useless answers. Fine. How are you? Good. And no one's even connecting. Take a second. These are micro connections. And I say a lot, you have to connect to correct. So if you're not connected, when you ask your hubby or your partner, to your wife, to do something, they're not going to want to do it if you're not connected. But if you're
Mhm.
connected and things are really good, and I say to Gary, can you please bring the toilet paper upstairs in that light voice? He's like, of course. Like, oh my gosh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry, I kept, and he'll even joke, oh my God, have I been stepping over this? I'm like, yeah, only for a few days. It's like, oh God,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't believe I don't see this stuff, And then we're joking and it's light. It's not a personal affront. So
Mhm.
it's really important, these little micro places, right? Great relationships aren't built in a day. Great relationships are built daily. Way more important than a date night is everyday greeting at the door.
Right.
Every
We
day.
focus on these like,
Yep.
oh, in a month from now, we got a babysitter, so we're gonna, go sit at a restaurant for a couple hours. And that's supposed to
And by the way, the whole time you're at the restaurant, you're like, "Oh my God, I don't want to have sex later. Oh crap, what am I gonna do? It's
I'm
friggin' date
bloated.
night." The whole time. And the whole time he's going, "Oh my God, I've spent $200 on this dinner and $100 on the babysitter. So it's $300 and I'm still not gonna have sex." Like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's going on, just for the record. But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. It's wild. And I feel like we get in these not like you're a robot, but you just, it's kind of like Groundhog's Day. Every day,
Yep.
like we get up, we get Milo
Yep.
ready for school. Like this morning, I did not even say bye to my husband when he left, but it's our little dog. If he knows that my husband's coming to like kiss me to say goodbye, he loses his goddamn mind. So we try and just kind of like, okay, like, yeah, I see that you're leaving. Like, I'm giving him the eye, like, okay.
Oh my
But
gosh. Or go outside.
yeah, no, I have to put the dog in his house so that we can say bye. But we need to be better at that. Like, oh, and when he comes home, like,
Yep.
yeah, it's
Micro
so,
connection, just like, hi,
yeah.
I see you. It's, oh my gosh, I missed you. One of the things I tell people to do is to not say I love you for a week and instead substitute it with what you really feel. It's like, oh,
Ah,
I'm going to miss you so much while you're gone. Oh my
yeah.
God, welcome home. I missed you so much today. I really appreciate you. I feel so grateful for our life. Thanks for going to work today while I was home, if that's the case. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things we can say, and it helps
Yeah.
us stay more in the moment than love you. Okay, mwah, bye. That sort of
Love
autopilot, I
you.
call it.
Yeah.
Coming off of autopilot is really important. And it's hard when we have kids. It's hard because we're working and we have kids and we're doing and we're hustling. And I know, like I got to stay home like 5 months with each kid, 6 months, well, 5 months with each, and then I was lucky enough to go back kind of part-time for a while and then full. And it's really hard. You just feel exhausted. Yeah, I was breastfeeding the whole time. I was, just all the craziness we put on ourselves and all the guilt we feel. And we have little people who are all over us physically. So this
Hmm.
other person wanting something physical, it's like, I don't know that I'm up for it. It's like, I don't, and God forbid you had a C-section or something after, that's really months of rehab, not 6 to 8 weeks. That's months of your
No,
body
no, no,
having
no,
gone
no.
through major surgery, or maybe had an episiotomy or God knows what else. There's just so many pieces that, and I remember from the breastfeed, I just, you feel like you don't feel sexy.
No, it's like your body is not your own.
It's not your own. And so it's all those things that at least the micro connections remind us that we're still, hi, it's me and you. I know,
Yeah.
I know the physical part isn't as big right now. Or kiss. We know that from the research, Gottman did this research, that a kiss that lasts more than 6 seconds, this is true for a hug also, releases oxytocin and different bonding neurotransmitters and different satiating neurotransmitters. So even just kiss at the door. Sometimes Gary and I make out the door. It's kind of fun, but you don't have to. But even just to really hug longer.
Again, because it's not like you're on autopilot, just like, okay,
Yep. Yep.
bye, love you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I get if you don't
Yeah.
want to have sex right now and he's complaining about that. I hear you. I get it. But try this. Because I know you don't want to do it on the couch later because it might lead to say, he's rubbing your feet, but he's thinking, how do I get in there, right? But at the door, he's leaving or he's coming in. That's not where people think they're having sex. So it's a
Yeah.
great time to have a little, you could have a little makeout session if you're up for it. It's a great time to just be right there. You know what I mean? Like in this other way, and to start to create those little mini connections.
And I would also argue that having those mini connections throughout the day would probably like increase the chance of you wanting to be
Yes,
intimate and having sex at
exactly.
another time, like
It, you
1,000%.
don't even have to argue it. The research shows it. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really is. By the way, men whose wives kiss them, this is heterosexual couples again, obviously, but before they leave the house, have a greater chance of not getting into car accidents by about
Oh,
40%.
why?
I don't know all the reasons why. This is research from University of Trier in Germany. They did all this research on this, but and it's been replicated. It's very interesting. Men
Huh.
have yep, they report more satisfaction in their lives. They have less car accidents. They have less problems than
Right.
men who are not kissed or hugged before they leave the house. Isn't that funny? Um,
Oh, poor
I
men.
know, and they haven't studied the women. Damn it, we leave the house too.
Yeah.
But just that thought sometimes that you're, I don't know, a protective factor for your man, you know,
Yeah.
is kind of cool.
Okay, well, this was a lovely conversation. I'm so happy that you came on and we got to meet. I will have to have you back on to talk more about boundaries because I love
I
this
love it.
topic.
Oh, I love it too.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book and also where people can find you and about your podcast and
Sure.
anything that you have? Do you have courses or anything like that?
You know, it's all on my website, which I'm sure you'll link to, is abbymedcalf.com, ABBYMEDCALF.com. That's it. That's where everything is. So if you want to check out the podcast, all the episodes are there. Obviously, they're everywhere else too, Stitcher and Apple and all the places. And I have a relationship tips and tools, a blog that goes along with every
Okay.
podcast, because some of us we have to read really quick and we only have a few minutes. And sometimes it's good to share with men because they won't listen to an hour, but they'll read
Yeah.
for 10 minutes. Just a little trick.
Smart.
And there's a communication toolkit for couples on there that's free. And I have like a free mindfulness starter kit and a free meditation starter kit, like things you need in your life that I think you should have. And then my books are there and they're on Amazon, of course. And all my social media and all that is all on the website. You can link to everything. So it's really where everything is. But if you go to the shop page on my website, there's a ton of free stuff. And because I think this information should be accessible to everybody. And then if you'd rather pay and have all the boundary stuff in one place, then you can buy the book or go on Amazon and buy it.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. It was so great talking to you.
And I'm on a roll.